Today, I would like to continue to share a little bit from the path of forgiveness that I have started last year and beginning of this year. And it's a wonderful practice to help to gain inner and external peace. Because if we still hold on to unskilled actions we have done, or to the slightest anger we hold because of an unjustified actions done towards us, so then we can't move forward. We are chained to the perpetrator, or we are chained to our own action. So forgiveness instead is a way to free ourselves to become really what we aspire to be: a kind, wise, compassionate, approachable person, so we can heal ourselves and the world. So there are several techniques how to forgive, and today I would like to share what I have learned from Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu and his daughter Mofo about the fourfold path of forgiving. There's this wonderful book that I read, and in this book, the fourfold path is described as a practice with journaling and physical exercises and a very practical approach, and it takes time. It's a book that you don't just read, you have to stop and really practice it. So the fourfold path of forgiving has been applied in South Africa after the apartheid, and is a very successful way to heal from the past and to move forward. It's seen as this example of South Africa applying the fourfold path of applying the practice of forgiveness is seen as a role model, as a message to the world that basically without forgiveness there's no future. So what's the fourfold path? The fourfold path is, as Desmond Tutu says, a conversation that begins with a personal choice to heal and to be free. A choice to seek peace and create a new story. We sit midst of our hurt and loss, and we face the choice of which path to take: revenge or reconciliation. So as you can see in that drawing on the whiteboard, there are two ways to deal with harm we have experienced, with hurt, with the loss. So one is the revenge cycle, as both authors have pointed out. It's so we experience a hurt, a harm, and then immediate feeling of pain occurs. And then if we don't have any practice, then we want to harm back, verbally, physically, mentally. And in that process, we don't see our shared humanity with each other. We don't have compassion. We don't see the suffering in the other person. So we want to pay back. We want to retaliate, and then do it violently in any form available. So let's look a little bit more into the other option, the choice to heal from the harm we have experienced. Because the revenge cycle is basically a continuous cycle. There will be no future. And the steps for the fourfold path is an option to really move forward, no matter what we experienced in life or what we did ourselves. So first is we tell the story. Yeah, just telling the story as we remember, that may help us to not carry the burden we have. So that can be with a nice friend, an empathic friend, even a counselor. And so we may have experiences such as traumas, very traumatic experiences, and we are trapped in these painful experiences. They limit us. We repeat them again and again in our mind. So now best would be actually to tell the story towards the person who harmed us. That may not be always the best choice, because we may not be safe, or the person doesn't show any remorse at all. So then the authors suggest that it's also good to go to a person who understands, who is empathic, who can listen to us, or we can write it down in a journal. This way, it will help to lessen the power that the story has over us. So then second step is naming the hurt, naming the pain. So if we don't name the pain, then alternatively we pretend it did not happen, we suppress it, we tell ourselves that it should not happen, or we think that we should not feel that way. Yeah, then the hurt will find another channel to come out. We all know that from our own experience too. We feel resentment, we feel anger, and the pain gets even bigger and bigger. It's like karma, expendable. It grows like a little seed, grows into a tree. So we have to learn to accept, and we accept what happened. We accept our vulnerability. The other option is to reject our suffering, our vulnerability, and take the cycle of revenge. So we accept and name the hurt, our feelings, our sufferings, and when we accept our feelings, then we accept ourselves and we let others to accept us too. So Desmond Tutu advises not to wait too long with that process. Maybe you have similar experiences. You got hurt and there's a challenging interpersonal relationship, and you hold it for days or even weeks or months, but it's always there and it's really uncomfortable and holds you somehow back. It takes some level of energy in your mind instead of being able to embrace life fully. So here advises, do it as soon as you can, as soon as you're ready. But even that can be sometimes not possible, because maybe the hurt has been done from a group of people or even the government. Then again, we could go to an alternative person, a friend, an empathic person, or we could write it down in a journal. Then the third path is the granting of forgiveness. And we can find forgiveness through love, compassion. We can learn to see others with compassion, even those who harmed us, as we learn to understand their own suffering. In that process, it's important to tell our story anew. So as a Buddhist practitioner, we know that by applying mind training, we can change the story. Or we can apply certain purification practices, and then the story itself transforms into something that we take power over and we are not overpowered. Yeah. So Desmond Tutu writes that taking the situation, rewriting the story is becoming heroes or heroines. So a heroine has the strength and ability, he says, to be generous and forgiving, and the power and freedom that comes from being able to make the choice to grant forgiveness. So yeah, as I said, we take the power back. We are not victims to whatever we have done or another person has done to us. And then the last step, the fourth step, is renewing or releasing the relationship. So renewing means to stay within the relationship, to stay connected, to repair. And this is actually the preferred path. But when it's, as I said, not safe to go to the person to renew the relationship, when the other person doesn't feel any remorse for the hurt done to us, then it's wiser to move away from that relationship. Release means to let go of the relationship, of the connection. And when we renew the relationship, then it's important that we take on the responsibility for our part as well. So every story, as we know, often has also our own story. It's not just that there's somebody who hurt us. We may have also participated in something, or just to start with, we ourselves have done something that was not quite right. Then we have to practice self-forgiveness first. And so we forgive ourselves for our own mistakes and wrong actions. And instead of identifying ourselves with the actions we have done, we remember the good qualities. We remember impermanence. So for example, I was quite angry with another person some days ago. And as a response, my MO was to identify myself with my reactivity, and I made myself bad. Yeah, put myself down for having the angry reaction. So there was this jumper, big angry jumper, right? It's just not jumper and then the action anger. So I felt ashamed, I felt guilty, I felt regret and sadness, and then kind Dharma friend here reminded me to be accepting and not to identify myself with the action. So yeah, then I remembered, yes, the fourfold path, telling my story. So I asked her if she would listen to me, and so I shared my story, and I named my hurts, my own hurts in that story, and I started to forgive myself. I the self-compassion that I can provide for myself, and I decided to be kind to myself. And then in that process, I was able to open myself up to the situation as well, and to the other person, and hear the other person's part of the story too. So as a result, I felt immediate release, I felt internal peace, and also I approached external peace. And last but not least, I would like to share His Holiness's version of forgiveness that he always shares, often shares. Not everybody may be aware of it, but he recalls this Buddhist monk, Venerable Lopon. He was 18 years imprisoned in the Chinese, due to the Chinese government after the occupation of the Chinese in Tibet. And he was, when he saw His Holiness 2 years later after his release, he shared about his experience in prison. And then His Holiness said, he told me the Chinese forced him to announce his religion. They tortured him many times in prison. I asked him whether he was ever afraid. Loponla then told him, yes, and there was one thing I was afraid of. I was afraid I may lose compassion for the Chinese. So His Holiness says he was very moved by this and also very inspired. And he paused, and then he tucked on his maroon robes and wrapped them tightly around this monk. Now, Loponla, forgiveness helped him in prison. Because of forgiveness, his bad experiences with Chinese did not get worse. Mentally and emotionally, he didn't suffer too much. He knew he could not escape, so better to accept reality than to be traumatized by that. So I'm very inspired by that too. And as Mopo and Tesma Tutu are saying, this process takes time. It takes a lot of effort, time, and courage. And new stuff may come on top of it. But if we have these skills, then we can move through whatever we have experienced, or through whatever we do ourselves, to find freedom and to move along on the path to awakening. Thank you.